First of all, we were of the view that this particular country is almost like an island of Europe in Africa. Somehow, any visitor who comes here tends to be made to believe almost that he is in Europe. He never sees blacks except in a subservient role. And this is all because of the cultural dominance of the particular group which is now in power.
The attempt of black consciousness was not to replace white subjectivity with black subjectivity, but simply to say that black people themselves needed to claim their own humanity and to live from that solid ontological, if you like, basis of knowing that they too are human beings.
Black consciousness defines itself as a philosophy and as a way of life. It is the commitment to a way of being human that takes account of your experiences, that seeks to transcend those experiences and reshape them in a transformatory way.
The whole colonial project was precisely an attempt to, as I see it, to rearrange the material conditions upon which black people build their lives, but also to distort and pervert the psychic life of black existence or black people. And so black consciousness is a reaction to that, is saying to black people that we need to claim our sense of psychic life back, we need to claim our sense of the materiality of our existence.
Now, if you look at what happened after apartheid, and a lot of the discussions that were happening were focused on principles of reconciliation and non-racialism and solidarity with each other. So black consciousness kind of took a slip.
Now, when I came to university, which was sometime in 1936, in my own analysis and that of my friends, there was some kind of anomaly in this situation where whites were in fact the main participants in our oppression and at the same time the main participants in the opposition to that oppression.
And at Stellenbosch University, the norm is white, the norm is Afrikaans, the norm is Afrikaans white male. We can go on and on and on.
Concepts would really come to life in situations of extreme contrast. What do I mean by this? So then somebody coming out of Soweto, let's say, getting into Stellenbosch, suddenly when you're in Stellenbosch and you're confronted with the sense of that, and you're in everything, and everything around you tells that you don't belong, pushes you out, then only then, I think, in those circumstances does this idea of black consciousness or Ubuntu really becomes stark and really important to you.
In terms of my conscientization as a black woman, that happened here at Stellenbosch. Specifically for Fees Must Fall. Fees Must Fall was an entire identity crisis for me because I was that, token black person, assimilated, white schools only, spoke only English at home, and I was very happy being a token black. So when Fees Must Fall happened and, I'm being confronted with all of these things that, hey man, this is your life, I started learning new words and new vocabulary that began to explain experiences that I'd had growing up, but I didn't know what they were or how to articulate that anger or why it was even a problem back then, So, yeah.
2 years later, 2 years down the line, you sort of wake up and you realize, but this is not who I am. And this person or this mold that I'm trying to fit into is actually incredibly violent to my existence and violent to my history and violent to my heritage. And I need to start having these conversations about my identity and about who I am. And in and above that, I need to start having these conversations about the space. Why is it that the space remains exclusive to white people? In my mind, I should be seeing a lot more people on campus who look like me, who speak like me, because that is the reality. I live in Africa.
As I say, it's when you get to a place that really rejects you now, for no other reason but for the fact that you look a particular way already, there's a all sorts of closures about who you are. Like, there's no room for you to be known for who you are, other than the fact that you are black.
And then you start having these conversations, and then you start realizing how relevant black consciousness is, how relevant being proud within your blackness is, and how important that is.
Or in government, but young people still feel in many ways, that they are not getting the best deal out of this post-apartheid negotiated settlement.
That was one of the failures of transitioning to a democracy in South Africa, whereby you have an ideology like black consciousness not being addressed or embedded within the new mechanisms of our governance.
I actually don't even know how to begin to answer that question. Black consciousness for me is essentially just, being conscious as a black person in your space, given the fact that, just the world, the entire system, the political economy on all levels, it was made for, white supremacy and the white man, essentially. So all I know is that I'm a beautiful black woman and people must just deal with their lives, okay?
It's not necessarily a matter of political survival, that it's not a matter of life and death, because it's of a different context, but I think the conversations that people are having today relate directly to black consciousness. A lot of issues that were left unaddressed. I mean, recently with what's happening at Pretoria Girls High about protesting with the hair, I think that stems from one loving one's black self, of self-love and expression. How can someone who natural hair be deemed as, unruly and needs to be, maintained in a way? And I think those kinds of things that are happening today relates directly to Steve Biko's ideologies of black consciousness. And I think that's how for me and for us, and the discussions that are happening among South Africans is still applied today.
Like, I was one of the first or only black kids at white schools, so just like microaggressions, racism, but you're a good black, you're not black, you're one of us, those conversations with white friends. I remember thinking, what do you mean? But that's fine because you're my friend, whatever, but...
That was one of the failures of transitioning to a democracy in South Africa, whereby you have an ideology like black consciousness not being addressed or embedded within the new mechanisms of our governance.
Decolonizing your mind, or how colonized you are as a being. That whole superiority complex that it gives you, because class is also a factor in terms of, just black people. I wasn't a poor black person, I was a rich black person, and because I was rich, I was closer to whiteness than other black people, so I prided myself in that, which is obviously then entirely problematic. So when I say Fees Must Fall was an identity crisis, I had to deal with that, because for a very long time I was very happy being that type of black person, and which is... No, it's a problem, because there are a lot of them. Our generation, especially the black people that took over power of the democracy, that this is what they did, and that's a problem.
I haven't really seen a sense in which we are grappling with the text and thinking about, Biko said this in the 1970s. Does it still apply today? Can we think about it differently?
Black consciousness, resonates with black women to a certain extent.
Because patriarchy, for it to exist, you needed women to agree to be treated like this, yeah? And when we talk about in the revolution, we are the backbone of the revolution, in the sense that we are the ones that, motivate the men, we are the ones that feed them, we are the ones that make sure that they can go out and do these things.
Women, or black women in particular in South Africa, are becoming a lot more critical of these black thinkers and people that are supposed to be speaking on behalf of all black people, because it was always a case of your race comes first, we will deal with issues such as feminism later.
Because a lot of the revolutionary literature, a lot of the decolonization literature has been framed in as a black man, men versus other men. It's been a man's thing, because war is a man's prerogative. So I think we've been under-theorized, undervalued, and just pushed to the sidelines.
And I think black women today specifically are saying, that is not acceptable. The issues need to be dealt with in an intersectional manner, and it's almost taken with a pinch of salt, basically. So acknowledging, certain things that were said about black solidarity, but also acknowledging patriarchy that exists, especially amongst black men as well, and taking that on head first. And I think in conversations that or that I'm having, or that I'm seeing today in South Africa, is that is clearly taking place with black women, you know, saying we cannot accept what men are saying all the time. We need to form our own thinking, our own writing, because no one else has our backs in that sense.
How is it that Biko might have said things that are setting us up for problems now that he may not have anticipated?
Black consciousness is an ideology and movement that will be restructured, that will be conceptualized for a new context, for a new society, and specifically keeping black women in mind. And once we do that and we take Biko's ideology and reclaim it for ourselves in a way that it fits our context, only then we can see a truly just and equal society in the new South Africa.